You've tried and you've tried, and you think you're doing really well until suddenly one last straw hits the pile and you lose your cool all over the place. Kids scatter or freeze. Things get really quiet, and you're filled with shame because you realize you've lost it again. This video is about breaking free of that painful dynamic and healing the root of overreacting. Not through willpower, because we already know that doesn't work. Can you imagine a home that feels safe and peaceful? A heart that doesn't sink at the end of the day when you look back and you see no outbursts. Children who not only love you, but trust you and don't fear you. It will take strength and determination, but it will change your entire life, and it will set a future in motion that you can barely imagine. Hi, I'm Morgiana Anderson. I'm mom to 8 homeschooled kids, so you know I've been there. I'm passionate about helping mothers who care deeply about their children's mental and emotional health, happiness, and freedom, not just when they're little, but throughout their lives. Because parenting is the ultimate long game. If that's you and you also want some health and happiness and freedom, you're in the right place. So like and subscribe. Overreacting usually has 2 roots, which are often entwined. We're going to start with the easier of the 2 and go into some of the pitfalls that go along with that. And then we'll address the second, which is harder, a little more tricky, and the pitfalls that accompany that root. And finally, we'll get to the healing, where you finally get to the real issue behind the overreacting. Because we all know that white knuckling it is just not working. It just doesn't, and it sets you up for failure again and again. And we'll talk about how to deal with these roots, how to actually heal from them, so we can pass on an emotional freedom to our children that will change everything. Reason number 1 for overreacting. This has to do with the nature of motherhood. We're often so depleted, there's no margin left in our life, that when one more thing piles on, it just snaps. Life changes when you get to be a mother. Whereas before you could maybe stay up late talking or partying or even just working, and then the next day you might sleep in a little bit or take a nap on your lunch break, maybe just hold it all together and get home and have some peace and quiet in the evening. That doesn't happen anymore. If the baby is awake, you're not getting any extra sleep. If the baby's not napping, you're not sleeping. And as for that alone time, let me know how that's going for you. Really though, after kids, there's so much less margin. It's just gone. You have to intentionally build it into your day. There's no sleeping in. There's no napping if the little one needs you. There's no alone time to regroup and only take care of yourself. And so that leads you to the pitfall number 1. So many of us want so badly to be a good mom. And this was me. You just want to be there for them. You want to do all the things. And so you give and you give and you give until you have nothing left to give. And that's when it snaps. Guilt just piles up. And this experience of failure in trying to be a good mom starts to become an identity in your mind and an expectation in your child's mind about interacting with you. Sets into this vicious cycle of self-reinforcing downward movement where you are less and less capable of dealing with it, you have less and less faith in yourself, and you're more and more likely to be triggered by anything that comes up. Pitfall number 2 is kind of the flip side of that. When you've heard people say, take care of yourself, you've heard people say, put on your own oxygen mask, or you shouldn't cater to your children. And so you're trying to do that. You're trying to get some alone time. You're trying to back up a little bit. But the more you lean out, the more they chase you. You know it. The way that they come to the bathroom when you're trying to go and knock and knock and knock, like you're going to escape out the window or something. Or when you're taking a nap, they'll come sneaking in the bedroom and burrow under the covers, like you're just going to disappear if they can't touch you. Or the way they cry and cling to you when you leave them with the sitters. Much of this is normal for little kids, but it becomes another vicious cycle. As the more that you try to escape physically, the more that you check out mentally, the more they pursue you, and the more overwhelming it is. The harder they push your buttons to try to get you to engage with them. You're the sun of their solar system, and when that gravity starts to erode, there's an instinctive panic to it to try to re-engage in any way possible. They're not being manipulative, it's instinctive. But it leads to an even greater sense of a need to escape, a need to get away from it. And that can lead to the third pitfall of being depleted, overwhelmed, and that is when it stops, when they stop chasing you, when you're busy and they hardly notice. You go out and they've got their own stuff going on. It seems like a win-win situation. It seems like you got your life back. You've trained them to live according to adult human life. But really, it's deceptive. It's a deceptive piece because when that bill comes due, it gets paid in messy and painful ways. As teens, kids like this don't care what you say, and they're not open to the kind of guidance that parents are supposed to be able to give their children, navigating tumultuous waters of adolescence. Even worse, they are wide open to bullying, trafficking, grooming of all sorts, and every kind of bad social connection. Not bad in a morally judgmental sense, but in a sense as unhealthy for them, bad for them, because they didn't get that anchor when they were little. And so now they're unconsciously desperate for anything that validates them, anything that seems to acknowledge their existence as important. So that's the first root. When mom is just too depleted and either she keeps giving until she can't give anymore, or she pulls back and then she either chased or they stop chasing. The second root is the trickier one. Anybody who's ever tried to face childhood trauma knows that it is difficult. When you're triggered, when that childhood trauma is triggered, you aren't responding to the here and now. You're mentally and emotionally flooded. And you're time warping to a situation that took place in your own childhood or a relationship that's being replayed inside of you. You are oftentimes filled with a dread, a sense of fear, overwhelm. It's not usually a conscious thing. It's just a feeling that comes flooding over you. And the meaning, like I said, it's usually not a conscious meaning, but the meaning to it is far greater than the actual occurrence itself. Pitfall number one of this is when you're trying to make it better. You're trying to shut down the situation before this impending doom that you feel, whatever happened when you were a child, takes place again. And you're trying to stave off the meaning that was burned into your brain before you even had the knowledge to realize that there are other ways of interpreting that situation. Pitfall number two is not trying to make it better, but it's unconsciously copying the parent or the person who traumatized you. You're not punishing the actual event, you're punishing the child who brought that feeling up for you. By being like that powerful parent in the scenario that you know you're too familiar with, you alleviate some of your internal distress and you dump it on your child to bear, as your parents or your traumatizers did to you. Ouch. The first step to healing is knowledge. You can't fix what you can't see. So I have another video that talks about a little notebook that changed my life. And if you're having trouble seeing what's going on, I really recommend you go and watch that because it explains an important practice that will allow you to take a step back and open up your eyes. And I encourage you to do that, not just to your children, but also to your own self. Practice that observation at least for a couple of days. When you're feeling triggered, when you feel that overreaction coming on, or even right after it happens, write down what you observe, even on yourself. There's just something different about writing it down, even in shorthand, even in messy little notes. It sinks in better. As you take that snapshot of that moment, you can catch a glimpse of what is happening and you can start to begin to heal. So after you have that observation done, we're going to start with the first root because that's actually the easier one to address and deal with. And it will vastly impact your capacity to deal with the second root. So here's some questions. How is your sleep? How is your nutrition? Are you eating well according to what your body needs? Are you making time to visit with friends, to have a period of spiritual renewal or creative outlet, some kind of play in your life that lifts the drudgery, that takes you out of the doldrums? Remember, margin doesn't just happen at this stage of life. You have to be really intentional about building it in. Where can you discipline yourself to give your mind and your body the care that they need to be at their best? to have a little give when the rough times come? Where can you lean in with generosity when your little ones come to you hungry to be filled, so that they feel enough validation in your presence, in your care for them, that they can relax and they can stop chasing you? This kind of thing is an ongoing evaluation. As life changes, as your family changes, you're going to have to revisit it as your opportunities and your needs change time and time again. It just kind of has to sit on the back burner at a simmer and keep going as life goes on, so that you can just keep fine-tuning it. Once it becomes a habit, it will simplify so many other things. Taking care of yourself will be the beginning of healing the root of overreaction. But the second part is equally important. Anyone who's tried knows how tricky it is to see yourself and your past trauma with clear eyes. Sometimes it's too painful to look at, and it's easier to just leave it unexamined. Sometimes our love for our parents and our commitment to them, because they tried hard, makes us feel disloyal if we see where they passed burdens onto us that were too heavy for our childish shoulders to bear. But unless we actually want to do the same thing, unless we are more committed to reliving the past than we are to freeing the future, it's worth it to take the time to open your eyes and see what we're doing and why. Remembering can be painful. If it was abusive, if it's triggering in a psychological way that you can't deal with, I highly recommend the help of therapists or counselors to help contain and direct this work. But for many of us, even though it's uncomfortable and it can be disorienting, it's a work that can be done just as well with a trusted friend or a supportive spouse, or even just a good pen and journal. What happened to you? Take some time to think back, to remember. Remember, we're not interpreting, we're not judging motive or intention. Just remember what happened. And if you're having a hard time remembering, because sometimes trauma does that to our brains, maybe check with someone who can fill in the gaps for you. A sibling or someone else who might have been there, but someone who will give you good information, not try to twist your mind, of course. As you remember what happened to you, the scenarios that you got into trouble, the things that triggered your parents, then move on and start making a list. Usually, as they happen, you'll be aware of them, of the things that trigger you. What sets you off? Is it loud voices? Is it destructiveness? Is it messiness? What about aggression towards siblings? It's helpful to know what that trigger is so you can be on the lookout and prepare yourself when you know those circumstances are coming up. Is it transitions? Toddlers are notorious for having to be talked through transitions, but we can take that same energy and turn it on ourselves. If you know that something's coming up that's going to trigger you, if you've done the work to be aware of that, you can turn that same energy on yourself and talk yourself through it. Just like your own little inner toddler, your little girl inside who's sad or lonely or hurt or frightened. You can be the adult voice who says, I've got this. This is what we're going to do. You can calm down. You don't have to freeze. You don't have to fight. You can also practice somatic exercises. You can ground yourself in your body with deep breathing or with sensory exercises like being aware of what you're actually smelling, being aware of what you're actually seeing or actually hearing, so that that pulls you into the present and doesn't let you fly off into the past somewhere where you're triggered and you don't really know what's going on. It can be incredibly helpful to realize that most of these things that are triggering are actually just very normal childhood occurrences, and that they don't mean anything about who your child will be, what your parenting actually is like, or what the future holds. You can be the best parent in the world, and your child might still get upset and knock a hole in the wall. You can be a good person raising a good kid, and they're still going to experiment with telling lies. You can be an attentive, calm, loving parent, and they're still going to wake up on the wrong side of the bed sometimes and come at their sister with the claws out. You can't control what they do all the time. And you certainly can't control what their experience is all of the time. But knowing that it's just a normal part of life is very helpful, can be a mantra to help you get through those rough times. So tell yourself a new story. If you sit with this work long enough, you're going to start hearing the stories that are in your mind, the meanings that you attach to this kind of occurrence. He's going to grow up and be disrespectful. She's going to be an entitled, whiny witch as a woman. No one will like him. People will think I'm a bad parent. Your children don't clean their room and you feel overwhelmed, like you're going to just blow up on them. Do you actually worry that they're going to grow up to be messy people who don't take responsibility for themselves? These are hard words, but it doesn't help to sanitize our fears. In fact, we're far more able to deal with them when we can see them fully in light of their complete irrationality. Many of them come because you are a good parent. You do care. You want the best for them. And you want to stave off bad consequences. But the stories that we tell ourselves really do matter. They shape the way we react. They shape our children's experience. And they shape the way our children grow in ways that are kind of weird to think about. And so experiment with pausing and telling yourself a new story in those moments where overreaction threatens. Consciously say to yourself, he's just a little boy. He's going to grow out of it. Lying is a common childhood experience. It often is a sign of intelligence. It doesn't mean anything about her future. She's not being wicked or manipulative. She's just trying to figure out how communication works and how to get her needs met. My toddler making a mess is just learning about the world the way that toddlers do. It means nothing to him at this age, and it shouldn't. The final key is this. Our children may do what we say in our homes. And as they grow up, they may do what we taught them to do, or they may not. But one thing is certain, they will become who you are. If you truly want to make a difference, if you truly want to address and heal that root of overreacting, now is the time to do it. Because as you heal that in yourself, you're giving your children the gift of freedom, not just from your anger, not just from your outbursts, not just from fear or discomfort in their home, which is reason enough. But this is freedom from continuing in the bondage of the same cycle with their families, with their loved ones. You literally can change the future, can change the world that you live in, for your children, for your grandchildren, and for generations to come. My video on what happens when you become your family's cycle breaker deals more with that, and I'll see you there.